Years later, Eugene Debs would write a short story called The Old Umbrella Mender, about a former ARU striker. The following is an excerpt from his writing. Quote, I was walking briskly toward my office. A stiff wind was blowing and drizzling rain was falling. The threads in one of the ribs of my umbrella snapped asunder, and the cover flew upward. I was about to lower my disabled shower stick when I ran slapdash into an old itinerant umbrella mender with his outfit slung across his back. He had noticed the ill behavior of my umbrella. It snapped from its bearing even as he had his eyes upon it. Perhaps it understood. He was about 65. His clothes evidently weathered many a storm. Besides being worn and shabby, were too light for that season. Overcoat he had none, nor gloves, nor overshoes. Mine embarrassed me. The outfit of the old fellow, carried on his back, was sorry enough to fit his general makeup, and if he had offered himself for sale just as he stood, including his earthly belongings and his immortal soul, he would not have found no bidder, nor brought a cent. He began to sew the cover back into its proper place. His fingers were red and numb. A discolored nail partly hid a badly bruised thumb. He had difficulty in doing this bit of sewing, and it plainly distressed him. Poor human soul, I thought to myself. A vagabond dog among his kind would fare better than this worn-out old umbrella mender in a civilized human community. The warm clothes I had on made me uncomfortable, as I saw him sitting there in rags. The overcoat I wore made me ashamed of myself. Every time the umbrella mender looked up out of his rags, I winced. What crime had he committed that condemned him to go through the world in tatters, to be lashed by the merciless blasts of winter and tormented by hunger pangs? Dared I call him brother? And could I call him brother without insulting him? Good morning, was the cheery greeting of a man who passed on the sidewalk, calling me by name. The old umbrella mender fairly started at the mention of my name. Excuse me, he said timidly. Is this Mr. Debs? Yes, I answered. Thank God. He fairly bounded to his feet. There were tears in his eyes, and his face was flushed. Say, Gene, he continued, I am pretty well down, ain't I? About all in and making my last stand before shuffling off. But say, Gene, I never scabbed. Look at these hands. I'm an old rail, and I followed the business for 27 years. If I'd been like some of them, I'd had a passenger train years ago and been saved a lot of grief. But I'd rather be a broken-down old umbrella fixer without a friend than be a scab and worth $1 million. Did you belong to the ARU? I asked. Did I? He answered. I was the first man in our division to sign the list. My card, I lost it in Ohio where I was running as a vagabond. I raised a row about it, and they threatened to lock me up again. Did I belong to the ARU? Well, I should say I did, and I am proud of it. When I cross the big divide, I can walk straight up to the bar of judgment and look God in the face without a flicker. We had the railroads whipped to a standstill, he said, warming up. But the soldiers, the courts, and the army of deputy United States Marshals that scabbed our jobs were too much for us. And then he told me the melancholy story of his own persecution and suffering after the strike. His job was gone, and his name was on the blacklist. 5 jobs he secured under assumed names were lost to him as soon as he was found out. Poverty began to harass him. He suffered much, but he had kept the faith, and his regrets were at least free from reproach. He was a broken-down old veteran of the Industrial Army. He had paid the penalties of his protest against privately owned industry and the slavery of his class. And now, in his old age, he was shuffling along in his rags toward a nameless grove in the potter's field. Had he scabbed on his fellow workers? Had he been mean and selfish and cold-blooded, he would have been promoted instead of blacklisted. His right to work and live, his home, his family, and his friends were all swept away because he refused to scab on his fellow men. The old umbrella mender stood before me proud and erect, and looked me straight in the eyes as he finished his pathetic story. The shabby clothes he wore were to him capitalist society's reward of manhood and badge of honor. His shabbiness was all on the outside, and he seemed transfigured to me and clad in garments of glory. He loomed before me like a forest monarch. The tempests had riven and denuded of its foliage, but could not lay low. Unquote. The labor movement in America was laid low right before the 20th century began. But just like the umbrella mender, the movement survived in spite of the violence and power arrayed against it.